I get shit done, I have fun. It's my time and I'm the one. I'm breaking through.
Hello and welcome to the Business Renovator once again. Today, it's how biases impact the workplace. Yeah, think about that. If you're here watching live, thank you for being here. Much appreciation to you. If you're not able to be here live and catching on the replay, thank you for doing that. Just hashtag replay and let us know where you're watching us in from. If you have a question for us now or during watching the replay, shoot it off and we'll do our best to get you an answer. Please share this out to your community. And if you would be so kind to go to our YouTube channel and subscribe, that would be greatly appreciated. Now I want to do a shameless plug for my business. So here we go. Shameless plug coming up. Yeah, it's free. Did you see that on the slide? It actually is free, no credit card required. And it's a bit of a gift for you watching the show and supporting us. All you need to do is go to coachphil.ca, and on the top right-hand corner of that homepage is a link, and it says Business Growth Score. Go there, click on it, answer the questions. You'll get an insight as to where you feel you are in your business. And if you would like to take us up on the complimentary coaching session, it's a 30-minute session, no credit card required again. We just would need to have a setup. So you could put that on the information when you complete the assessment, and we'll reach back out to you to help you with your question. If I don't have the answer to your question, the good news is I'm part of a network of global business coaches with a diverse background as well as experience. So don't be shy, reach out. We don't bite. But we do have some really good ideas. So I want to move right on into bringing up my guest who's given up time to be here to share some insights about biases and how they impact the workplace. We had a humorous green room conversation, and we might talk about that as we go through today. But before I get into that, let's talk about Luiza Dreasher, who has over 20 years of experience in areas of diversity, equity, inclusion, cultural competence, development. Her expertise is actually global, and domestic diversity has led to consulting jobs, presentations to numerous audiences, including the United States Department of Defense, Pioneer Hi-Bred International, Schreiber Foods of Brazil, MN Department, I think that's Minnesota, being a Canadian, I may have got the state wrong, public safety, and numerous other institutions of higher education. She is the president and CEO of Mastering Cultural Differences. She partners with organizations to help them address the incredible challenges of increasingly diverse workplaces. Her goal is to help leaders create a company culture where all individuals feel valued, respected, included, and that they belong. So I want to make her feel like she belongs and get her up on the screen with me right now. Good morning and welcome to the show, and thank you for being here, by the way.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me. This is really a pleasure.
We were having a giggle behind, and we're talking about how because you're originally from Brazil, correct?
Yes.
And we were having a conversation about your name. We won't go into a deep diver on that because, like you said, it's a whole new story. And as you were explaining, I went, it's an exciting story, but we're not here to talk about that in depth. But all of that experience that you've had, life experience, and some of the stories like you were sharing about being in the back of a car with a bunch of ladies and talking about dressing chickens and how that translates inaccurately, between languages, right, and cultures, which is kind of what we're talking about today. And how do we help people feel included, just like we read off in your introduction? So I'm excited to talk about that a little bit.
Yes, absolutely. First, a disclaimer. By now, I'm sure your viewers are picking up on my accent. Usually, sometimes I joke this is my Minnesota nice accent, but that's not the case. My this accent comes to you via Brazil, where I was born and raised. I came to the U.S. Actually to practice English. I was teaching English in Brazil to kindergartners, and I had the opportunity. I came over, and then things lined up. I was able to work on my master's and my PhD, and then I've had. I think of myself as someone who's incredibly privileged by virtue of the experiences that I've had. I I had the opportunity. I worked in Ukraine and in Japan and in Spain and Puerto Rico. So I often think of myself, yes, I am Brazilian by birth, but I am multicultural by choice.
Yeah.
And in all my experiences, like you mentioned, I've been in this business, in this field for over 20 years. I've learned two significant lessons that really um, guide, who I am, what I do, and how I work with organizations. The first one I've learned really early on when I first arrived is that cultural differences matter. And if we want to be successful in our intercultural interactions, we need to pay attention to that. We cannot ignore that. It's almost as if each culture has its own rule book. And the rule books do not seamlessly translate into another culture. We have to learn about different cultures if we want to interact successfully. And I learned, the hard way when I first arrived. I made a lot of mistakes, some really embarrassing mistakes. But to be successful here, I had to learn them. So that was my lesson number one. Cultural differences matter.
Before you go into the second one,
Yes.
I wanted to share, because I think what you're about makes sense and probably is, and it needs more people doing what you're doing. I worked for a company that had a global presence in the tech field, and because of its global presence, diversity just was a natural thing, because you had people from all walks of life, different colors, different beliefs. But the common thing is we're all working for the same company to provide tech solutions to the world.
Mhm.
And what I learned by hanging out with the different people is, people would know 5 or 6 languages. Their rituals are different than mine. Their food is different. So I'm fortunate enough that I could be open enough to experiment with their life. So I didn't have to travel to where they came from. I got to experience it through them. It's not the same as being there, but it does give you some. It gave me some insights and some empathy to the value that everybody has. Sorry to interrupt, but you just brought that up in my head.
No, and what you said is key, the way you approached it. Because for many individuals, differences are scary. They approach the situation with an us versus them mentality, which keeps them apart. But you approached it in a way, this is exciting, this is interesting, let me learn about it. And this is exactly what we need. So you
Anyway,
did well. You did well.
thank you. And the other thing that's fascinating me, because I didn't know that you were teaching kindergartners to speak English, and now you're teaching and coaching and consulting a diverse group of people, which is no pun intended, to be better connected, right?
Yes.
And have more empathy towards each other.
Yeah. And you said a key word there, connection. If I were, when I was working with my marketing team and doing some branding, I was pushed to describe myself with one word. which is something very, very hard to do. What
Mm.
one word of all the words would describe me? And after a lot of thinking and a lot of brainstorming, it came down to I am a connector. And that is reflected in everything that I do. I build bridges across differences to help individuals work better across differences.
Connector. I like that. So what made you go from I know a little bit about your backstory. You've traveled around and had a whole bunch of experiences, but what motivated you, inspired you to go from teaching kindergartners to what you're doing now?
Well, I think it started with first I had the opportunity. I was teaching kindergartners in Brazil. A friend of mine, uh, we graduated from college together, and her husband had received a scholarship to pursue his PhD at Iowa State, and she invited me to come with her just to practice English and help. They had just had twins,
Mm.
so I helped. I lived with them, helped with the kids, and fulfilled my goal of practicing English. And then other opportunities, uh, you know. Came to life. I took one course at Iowa State. I did well. My professor encouraged me to apply for my assistant an assistantship. I was packed and ready to go home, and the department chair called me, offered me an assistantship, and what that meant was I can stay and pursue my education, because a dream that I had. I had decided very early on that I would pursue a PhD. I would have I didn't know in what. It didn't matter. I wanted a PhD. And that was important to me because I'm a first generation. My mom had third grade. My father had fourth grade. But we were fortunate enough to be in a household where education was valued. Of all my family, my extended family, I think I'm the only one with a PhD. Now, it didn't have to be on another country on a second language. That was a whole different, story there. Sometimes I questioned my sanity of doing that, of pursuing something, in a different country, a second language. But that was, my dream one. And the other dream was, to write a book. That was on my pipeline, and I was able to do that.
Wait a minute. That was a segue for me. Watch me push the buttons and make things happen. It's right here. Where did it go? I have it here for you. Let's bring it up so people can see it. Okay, there it is. Mastering Cultural Differences. It's the book you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
How long?
And that was basically something that was on my bucket list. And I think it made sense after all my experiences and many years. By the time I wrote my book, it was about 20 years in researching, writing, teaching, conducting workshops, about cultural differences and how cultural differences impact the workplace. So it made sense, and I had a lot of fun. I had a blast writing this book, not only because I share some of my own experiences, including when I kept missing the bus and being late for class because of a time difference. The way I viewed time very differently than U.S. Americans did. But I also share some disastrous situations that happened because organizations did not pay attention to cultural differences, especially in global workplaces. Globalization is bringing people from all over the world together, and increased immigration. So we are working we don't have to travel overseas anymore to be around individuals who are from a different nationality. So, and those are the individuals in our workplaces that we are dealing with, that we need to have an understanding of their perspective.
Workplaces, communities, and Bowness Park. You go, Bowness Park? About an 8-minute drive from where I live in Calgary is a city park, which is one of my favorite places to go, no matter whether it's cold or like with winter or summer or fall. And one of the reasons why is the diversification that I see there. Now, I don't stop and talk to everybody that's in the park. That'd be kind of rude. I do talk to some, but you can see different communities. I don't want to call them tribes or clans, but different communities. And there seems to be family is a core value for particular cultures, more so than Western society. Yes, they say it is, but not to what I've seen in the park, where they're huge. And it's not a wedding. It's just they're there having a meal, sharing some bread, and playing music. It's fascinating, the diversity that shows up in that park.
Yeah, yeah. You could just sit there and observe and learn quite a bit.
Yeah, and I think the world as a whole, we're more transient and becoming even more integrated with different cultures, different ethnicities, different countries are showing up in Canada, the U.S., England, etc. And there's a blending of cultures. There's a Canadian comedian. I don't know if you've heard of him, Russell Peters. He uses a little bit of foul language, a little bit, but Russell Peters is an Indian, a Canadian Indian, not an indigenous Indian, but an Indian from India. Indian. It gets confusing, right? And what I like about his humor and his message is he's breaking down the walls with the different cultures, and he picks on all of us, and he can get away with it, and he has, and he makes us all laugh. It doesn't matter what color your skin is or where you're from. He picks on all of us.
Yeah, and that is so important. In fact, one of the lessons that I learned very early on, I had the opportunity to spend some time at the East West Center in Hawaii. There was a program there that I was accepted into. And during that program, I went through some trainings by an individual called Gregory Trifanovich. A lot of people have not heard of him, but he was the one who developed a lot of the training for the Peace Corps. He was teaching, educators getting ready to go overseas. And he said something that I never forgot, was that we look at the world through our window. It's like we open the window and that's what we see the world. And when we learn about a different culture, a different perspective, it's almost as if a whole new window would open up, and you can see, now you can see the world from different perspectives, different points of views. And that is so important whenever I'm working with individuals, with CEOs. I tell them the number one skill that you can have, that you need to have now to lead inclusively, to create an inclusive organization, you need to understand the perspective of others. You need to understand where they are coming from.
I like that. It reminds me of two things that I've been introduced to over the years. And as a phrase, we act not in accordance with the truth as it is, but how we perceive it to be. And the other nugget that ties to it, I like the windows. I could see windows opening. The way it was introduced to me, I don't know, 4 decades ago, was a kaleidoscope. Same idea, right? You look at a kaleidoscope and you twist it a bit, you get a different point of view. But I like the windows, and as you open up another one, you see another window, and I moved along with you in my imagination.
Yeah, it expands your worldview.
Yeah,
and that also tells you that there's more than one perspective.
Oh, absolutely.
There are multiple perspectives, and you need to understand that. I know what it is to be me. How I walk into workplaces, for example, as being me, but I don't know what it means how it is to be, a Black person, how it is to walk in as someone on a wheelchair, or how to be as a transgender, or wearing a hijab. I don't know these perspectives, and there needs to be spaces so that we can learn from each other and understand each other.
Yeah, I think, how did you say it at the beginning? We tend to, our default mechanism seems to be, I shouldn't say everybody, but many of us. There's a psychologist, Sean Aker, that talks about 75% of our thoughts activate our amygdala, which means this is going to be harmful. It's going to hurt me. And we show up automatically with that bias.
Mhm.
He's suggesting that it's really important to recognize that. And actually, if I'm going to turn my head here, because I have a whiteboard up there, and on there I've written 3 to 1. So because we have a 75% bias to everything's going to be harmful, we're afraid of it, something bad's going to happen, and at an unconscious level, not consciously, it's automatic. He says and prescribes that we need to think of things, positive things, the good things in other people, for example, 3 times to every negative. So that's 75%. It's a bit of work, but I experienced that it's well worth the effort.
Mhm. Oh, absolutely. And that is somewhat a natural reaction, because we approach things from our own perspective. But the key is being aware of our biases. We
Yes.
have to know. When I teach about intercultural development, I tell individuals, yes, this is somewhat normal, but you have to be aware of the way you're seeing situations, seeing individuals, and so that you can mitigate that.
Right.
And that is, our biases impact the workplace in so many levels. In fact, one of the articles that I wrote was, we need to stop hiring for culture fit. Instead, we need to start hiring for culture add, but because culture fit, that means I want someone exactly like me, who thinks like me, who talks like me. And that's a red flag that biases are going on, because we tend to navigate towards people who are like us. So that's, if we're looking for culture fit, for someone to come in and fit into this culture, that means biases are behind my thinking. So we need to be aware of that.
That's interesting.
So that we are open to different perspectives.
Could we have, I'm not disagreeing with you. Could we have culture fit that is opposite of what you just defined it as? Like, I hear what you say. We want the same because we already know it. They got to be what we already are. I don't want to say but, because that negates everything I just said. Could it be culture fit would be, we're open, we're diverse, that could be a bias that would fit within a culture fit, would it? Isn't it? Because they're all inclusive and open to the variances.
I think the way I see it is, I need to be able to come in and be myself and contribute and make the contributions, and not hide aspects of my identity, where I can come in, be authentic, and still make contributions
Yeah, okay.
to the workplace. One of the first lessons, advices that I was given many, many years ago, you think about it, when you're doing an interview, very likely by the time HR vets everybody and puts the candidates in your place, in front of you, they all can do it. They all can perform the tasks. So she said that my former boss said, always look for what else can they bring to the organization, because that brings different perspectives. That helps the organization grow. And let me tell you that the times that I did that, that I hired for the potential to grow, to take the organization to another level, we grew so much, as opposed to come in, these are the tasks, perform these tasks. I looked for people who could help us grow, who different perspectives, and I think that's what I was leading, towards potential for growth.
Yeah, yeah. It's adding value to the experience for all,
Yes,
is what I'm hearing.
absolutely.
If my head's down, look, I'm writing notes. It's not that I'm not interested, I'm fascinated. Okay, look at that, time flies already. We're not done yet, but we're getting really close to it. So what I got, so some of the notes I put here was you had a bucket list, and I think that's whether it's diversification or whatever other aspiration you have a bucket list, have a list of things you want to do. You said you wanted a PhD, you'd made up your mind you're going to have it no matter what, sort of what I picked up from it. You didn't care in what discipline at the point where you decided to do it. You had, and you answered the question I was going to ask. Well, why did you want a PhD? And you told us why, because your family was grade 3 and grade 4, and you wanted to move on a bit further than them and make them proud. This is my bias to what I heard. I'm adding my own writer's creativeness to it. And then writing a book, which we shared in the show. We showed the image of it. We didn't say where they could get that. So maybe I'll pause on the other nugget that I got here. Where would they get your book?
It's on Amazon.
Okay.
You can find the whole world in Amazon.
Okay, perfect. And I like this, and I like this. What else? In my world, in the coaching space, one of the things we get people to do is live with that kind of a mindset, whether it's diversification or if it's a business problem or a personal challenge. Brainstorming and getting out of the logical mind and getting into the creative mind, asking a question like, what else can we do? What else can I bring? I love that in what you're talking about in your field. It's a magical thing. And then the other thing around that is another way to ask the same question. Yes, and right. It's both of them are allowing us to be exploring possibilities, new ideas. And I think that's what I heard you say, what you help people understand in the side of bringing people together in the uniqueness of everybody's, but how they can work together. And by doing that, we get to add value. Is that what I heard you say?
Yes. The what else is so important, because there's always a possible, there's a different explanation that you have to explore. I've worked with, in my teachings and in my trainings, I have some activities that I have individuals explore that, because we always approach situations from our own perspective, what our own lens is on, from our own point of view. But there's always a different one, and you have to understand where the other is coming from. Why? When I was teaching at the law school, one of the activities I had my students, I was teaching cultural competence for the legal profession. The activity was, okay, it's a child, dispute, who is going to keep the child, the mother or the father. The mother was told she had to seek counseling. She didn't go. Why? So I would have them and brainstorm, come up with all possibilities, all reasons why. Well, she didn't have the money. She in a new city. She couldn't navigate the bus system. In her culture, only crazy people go to counseling. Only mothers take care of children. So there's no way that the judge is going to award the custody to the husband. So you have to explore all the possibilities so that you understand. You don't know until you ask.
Mhm.
So you understand where she's coming from so that you can coach that individual and help her understand, a different, perspective, a different context. So that's very important. There is always there are many possible, I live in a world where there are many possible logical explanations, which probably drives some individuals crazy, because in my world there is many possible different answers
Yeah,
to the
many
question.
solutions. What I like about that was if we're solution focused and oriented, we're likely to find it. Uh,
Mhm.
and I think that's what I heard about the biases and how they impact people. So if we could open up our mind, put our biases aside, and learn about the people, culture, and the differences, and embrace them as best we can as we grow
Mhm.
into understanding what the impact of biases are.
Yeah.
That
And,
makes sense.
I tell my CEOs all the time, the right, or my leaders, the right answer will depend on who is in the room.
Yeah, that's very true. I'm not going to ask you for a nugget. What would you share with us? Because that last statement, I think that was it. That
Yeah.
was. I think that's a
You
great
know,
place.
a message would be, follow your heart. Follow your heart. Be true to yourself. And you accomplish great things doing that. That's what I did, when I came to Brazil, from Brazil, and all my experiences. I ended up, discovering, I am a connector, and everything I do is to connect individuals across differences. That's what is important to me, and where I spend my time and energy doing.
And I want to make sure people know how to get a hold of you. So I've put it up here. What we're looking at is your LinkedIn page and the URL, nice and big so people can read it. Because you tried to read it up here.
You
Up
can't read it.
You can't. That's too. I can't read that. So it's down here, easy to read at the bottom. So wow, this was insightful. Time went racing by.
I
And we
know.
could have a whole segment on about your names and all the different challenges and things you had, but we'll save that for another time, perhaps.
Yeah, just invite me back, and I'll gladly come and have conversations with you.
Awesome. That was a lot of fun. Let me get back to yours. So yeah, I want to thank you for being here. I had an enlightenment. Enlightenment, is that the right word? I'm elevated. I feel energized. I learned some things. I got some things confirmed for me. And I also recognize that I have work to do on my biases. So thank you for
All of us,
sharing
all
some
of
time
us,
with us.
we are all biased, and I think recognizing that is step one.
Yeah. Again, thank you for being here.
You're welcome. It was a great pleasure, and invite me back.
I will do that. That was exciting. It was fun. I did get a lot of nuggets. I'm not going to repeat them all, but have a bucket list, and then be open to learning and be fascinated with other people. I think is one of the things I take from that. Um, and also, you could be this. The you and wonderful is representing you, so you are unique and you are wonderful. So continue being your unique self. Until next time, I'm Coach Phil. I'm the Business Renovator.
I get shit done, I have fun. It's my time and I'm the one. I'm brave.